So my situation is not very bad.
There might be a slight delay.
So this is where I ate at last night. Is Russ in the house? Is Russ over there somewhere? Anyway, so I get there last night. I ate at Llewellyn's barbecue last night. It was really official, man. I really enjoyed that barbecue. So even though North Carolina tried to rip off our state flag, I'm still cool with it.
Who do you think came first?
North Carolina, right? Background of me is I joined the U.S. Navy when I was 18 years old, and I'm from a little small town called Marlin, Texas. It's a town of about 3,000 people. So I'm a country boy, big time. I'm the country's person you're gonna be proud of. So from the country, I took an ASVAB test, and I scored pretty good on it. So I went to Navy cryptography, and they trained me a Navy crypto dude. So I got to do really cool stuff, go around the world, doing like really, really awesome stuff that I can't even talk about or whatever. And doing like real kind of like spy type stuff. And it was like awesome. So that's where I learned about espionage, and SIGINT, all these different things, and all the kind of stuff that Snowden leaked. And so my last duty station in the Navy, I did 3 years at NSA, where I did a lot of pretty cool stuff. I built global networks. I was really into networking and telecommunications, so I worked at NSA. And that, like the last year I was there, I got to work on the top team. They called it the IP team. It was an internet protocol team during the day, and I built the global infrastructure for NSA, upgraded switches, routers, and all that stuff. One of my funniest things from the networking side of NSA is we had a field site somewhere in North America, and we just had an airman that transferred there that I knew. And so I was actually troubleshooting the circuit. I actually accidentally shut down that site on accident because I closed the router down on that site, so they were offline. Luckily, I called my buddy up, hey, can you reboot that router for me? And everything is all good. It's always good to have friends in the right places, right? So during that time, at night, what I did is I got into the cybersecurity thing, where I started doing, I worked for a contractor called Windermere Group, and they were associated with Will Group. They actually invented NetRanger back in the day, like one of the first popular IDSs. And I actually deployed those at NSA. This was a part-time job. I made more of my part-time job in the Navy than I did in my regular Navy day. So at night, I was a cybersecurity dude at the agency. I helped build up the first SOC at NSA, and I actually helped build up the first SOC at DIA as well. So I got to see early in the game a lot of attacks, and just getting into that right then and there. So by day, I built the networks, and then by night, I actually defended the networks on those high sides. So I learned a lot about what's going on, and it was pretty cool because I learned pretty quickly because I come from the hood, right? So when I would talk to my buddies about like breaking news and stuff, I would be like, hey man, that's messed up what's going on in Rwanda, right? And my buddy is like, this dude from my home, because I'm from the hood. It's like, Rwanda, I don't know her. Who's that? So I realized quickly I was like in a different world, right? Then after 8.5 years, when I was stationed in Fort Meade, I got out and I started working for Computer Sciences Corporation, which is a big contractor. They probably got people even around here or whatever. Huge contractor. And that was an awesome opportunity to continue to support the agency, NSA, and eventually the coolest job I've ever had before I started this company was I worked at the Defense Cybercrime Center. And at the Defense Cybercrime Center, the mission was they actually do forensics for all of the military and DIV, and they're like they're a power player in the whole forensics game. So there, it taught me forensics, and the cool thing there is I got a chance to work with a famous hacker, Johnny Long, and working with Johnny, I work with Johnny every day. Share off. Actually, got to share an office with Johnny Long. So me and Johnny had a little office together. All we used to do is hack stuff and talk about life. So there, the cool thing about that was I'm like, you know, what Johnny's really talented, as you might know. I got a chance to work with like one of the top hackers in the world, and I was like, man, I'm just the luckiest son of man on earth. I'm just a little country boy from, you know, from Texas, and I get to keep on meeting these people and working with these awesome people. So there, the biggest thing that we did there, we built this course called Live Network Investigation. In that course, we built an enterprise mock-up network. And initially, Johnny was he was the hacker, and I was the defender. I was blue team, Johnny was red team. And so on another side, in another room, you had federal agents that we were training at Bsides, and those federal agents was trying to track down Johnny Long on a corporate network. The cool thing about it is Johnny had access to cool stuff like Chinese malware. We could use this malware on the network and imitate the nation states and all that stuff. And it was an absolutely awesome experience. And as you know, Johnny, back when before he went to Uganda, and he lived in Uganda now, if you don't know, Hackers for Charity, Johnny was gone so much, they needed somebody to replace Johnny. So Johnny's like, all right, I want to teach Marcus this red team stuff, right? And so now you got the world, you know, one of the world's most famous hackers, quote unquote, teaching me how to do all that stuff. You know, we had all the tools available to man. On the defensive side, we taught NGX Enterprise back then. We had Core Impact. We had, you know, Metasploit, of course. I mean, just whatever tool we could get, plus malware to do beaconing and callback to real live malware. And we imitated these nation-state attackers. So it was great. I learned how attackers move. I got to use their malware. I got to do all that stuff. And so by the end of it, I was like doing most of the red team stuff. And they call me at DC3 or Bsides, they call me pretty much Johnny. That's what they call me. So that was cool. So after that, I'll give you my background to kind of, first thing when you speak, you're supposed to establish credibility. This might be a little bit long, but hopefully you get my insight, like where I come from and how I think. So I work for CMS. CMS, the cool thing about the CMS network is a diehard where they're doing the fire sale, that one where it was a cybersecurity attack and all that stuff. CMS is actually the network that was mocking up. That was supposed to be to add all the information on all the citizens. That network is the network that was supposed to be in the movie. And it's funny because you watch the movie, they talk about Security Boulevard, Woodlawn, and all that. That's actually where that was CMS's network. So.
Sorry.
No, we're good.
We got a little technical difficulty, but you're still presenting to the room.
All right, fantastic. All right, so that network was a huge data center again. So I went from NSA. NSA has the biggest data center I've ever seen in my life. And then but CMS had a really big database. Like all you guys are in CMS database, whether you know it or not. So I got to defend that.
You made sure of that. Huh? You made sure we're in there. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, so that database is very sensitive, of course, kind of like an OPM type thing where it has data about ridiculous amount of data. So I got to defend that. There, I was like a recommender to the actual program manager. The program manager, the head security person, like would be like a CISO person for the government contractor. I actually used to do all the recommendations for. So people were bringing product, I would vet the product, test the product using my hackery type knowledge, and I would do a product recommendation for this big enterprise network. So I got to see a lot of other cool stuff. We were trying to hack into that stuff and all that stuff as well. And then after that, I joined Rapid7, and Rapid7 was another cool opportunity. I got to work directly with HD Moore every day, and HD is a kind of a popular dude on the internet too. So again, little country boy from Texas. It just happens that you just keep on working with these like really influential people in the industry. Learned a lot from HD, learned how to make products from him, and then eventually I got let go by Rapid7 for a bunch of different reasons, but because I'm a good guy. So not going into that, but the next major thing I did over like a 2-year period, what I did is I actually started writing my own tools. Eventually, I caught the attention of Mach 37, and this is where my life changed in 2 major ways. Huh? The lights went up. So, yeah, there we go.
Unfortunately, every time I click like to start or stop the stream, that device interrupts us. I'm sorry.
Oh, right. I'm good. So the cool thing about Mach 37 is that it actually helped me like take the whole product thing, create my own product to the next level. But the other interesting thing I learned was I actually learned more about business than I ever could have imagined, right? So I understood the technical side, and a lot of people complain all the time. I heard people saying, "Oh, well, you don't really know. You need to know the business side." And it's a lot of pen testers that do focus on the business side, but a lot of pen testers just focus on that whole on the technical, pure technical thing. What can I do technical, right? And some organizations, even the vendors, support on what can I do technical, and what can they do, and they don't really prioritize like the actual business. So by going to this accelerator, I created this company called Bthreat. I'm not going to talk too much about what we're doing in Bthreat right now, but just keep it in mind. I can talk to you about afterwards. But the whole point is this: I learned a whole different world of stuff, of just business, and now I know, since I know security, and now I know the things that are like vital to a business being successful. It's like totally blew my mind, right? And that's what, and the reason why it's directly related to cyber espionage is I have an intimate knowledge now of how to hurt a business better than I ever would have known before. And it's not just technical. It's actually, some of it's technical because you got the information, but then how you apply that information. This actually changed my mind about a lot of things. So the truth is, and I'm a firm believer, I'm not a defeatist or nothing, but I believe that information wants to be free. Information is always going to be leaking out your network. And even when I was at NSA, and I was on the ship and all this stuff, I worked on really secure, classified stuff. But at the end of the day, we had an emergency destruction policy. We also had classification of data that we deemed at different levels. Of course, top secret data would cause grave damage, irreparable harm to the country. That's why you don't get it leaked. Confidential, but actually classifications expire in the military. So stuff becomes unclassified after a while. So the thing about that is that in the civilian world, not a lot of people do classification of their data. And the problem is this, right? So if you're fighting a battle of where the data is getting bigger, and you classifying all the data at the same classification, and you have to protect the data forever. And in reality, and I'll talk about this later, it's directly related to the business, is some plans are temporary. And like in the military, we use different kind of cryptos depending on what the thing was. If you're saying, hey troops, go attack this target right here, that's only vital till they actually attack the target, right? But then after that, it's personal information at that point, right? But in business, we want to protect everything forever at the same level. And that's actually untenable. We don't do that, and we didn't do that in NSA, and we don't do that in the military, right? So this is the first thing. Information is going to get out there, and people talk about that. People talk about it all the time. There's no such thing. I actually used to believe when I first got in the game that hey, you could be 100% secure if you follow all these rules. Now, who's brave enough to admit that they thought that too? Everybody ever thought they could be 100% secure? No. Not a lot of people are going to raise their hand. I totally believe that. Also, another problem that we have is we worry about the attack vector too much. In here. Directly related to cyber espionage because people are going for intel now. And what happens there is that we focus too much on the target. In the military and on the ship, we did general quarters. We have any sailors in the house in the Navy? So shipmates, love my shipmates come out. So we did general quarters on the ship, and it was we pretty much had the same standard operating procedures, pretty much any kind of thing. Like if there was a fire, if there was a oil spillage or whatever catastrophe there was, everybody manned their stations, right? And it didn't matter. We didn't focus really on the type of attack because you could get hit with a missile and have a fire. You could have somebody, you could have a fry cook, you could have, be doing fries in the galley and there could be a fire. So it's all these kind of attack vectors, all these kind of crises that could happen. But in the security world, it seems like people are going towards just preparing for every attack or detecting every attack and all that stuff. Or I think that what we should do is roll it back, and I'm going to get into it later, is because the truth is, some things don't change that much. This right here is a wooden bicycle. I can't read Latvian or whatever that is, but everybody who looks at that tells us a bicycle, right? You're not going to do the Tour de France in that, but it's still a bicycle, right? And so I don't believe that attacks change the whole scenario that much. I believe that an attack is an attack. I keep on reading about the dark, like if you look at dark reading, they always have some kind of, oh, this is a new, awesome, sexy exploit. This is this is that. But the deal is, in general, what we do in the military is we're kind of, anybody know the Boy Scout motto? Be prepared. Be prepared. Like, it's like, you gotta be prepared like for anything in general, right? So you have your thing. So I'm going to go into a couple of things and how attackers move, and then I'm going to go into the business implications and what that means for from the espionage perspective. So it's a sprinkler, right? So I put this sprinkler right here to a infected machine on your network. Anybody see that sprinkler dance? So you're going to this infected machine is going to be reaching out to additional targets throughout the network. That lateral movement, can you detect that lateral movement on your network, for instance? Like many people, they can't detect it or defend it. So what I like to do is I like to look at, how would you do that? Like, could you put a cone on that? Could you put a cone on that sprinkler to prevent it from getting the rest of your lawn wet if you wanted to do that? Of course you could. That would be something like a private beeline or something like that. Or some other kind of thing like that. Or firewalls or some kind of segmentation of the network. But a sprinkler definitely is exactly equivalent. And could you detect it if it happened? Right? How many people can say 100% definitive that you can detect somebody doing a lateral movement, this little sprinkler on your network? Can anybody detect that on your network right now? You can. Alright, so I love you, Josh. So
It's kind of my company.
yeah. So that's actually important for everybody too. Like, these are the kind of things that, like, if I say who runs antivirus on the network, most of the people will say, yeah, I have AV or something like that. So I think that, like, I'm talking about the basics of what we should be having. So just like somebody coming up, I just moved recently. I wasn't this organized on contents and all that stuff. The funny thing about hackers is this, and this is what's funny. It's not funny about the OPM case, but attackers don't actually write down the stuff that they're stealing off your network, right? Who would figure, right? It would be nice if they said, hey, I just stole your SF-86s, I just stole this, I just stole that. Attackers don't do that. So the truth is, attackers, what they do, they box it up, but usually they encrypt it, right? They'll RAR it, or whatever. That's what most of their RAR, nobody uses RAR except for attackers, really. It's funny, right? So they zip it up, they encrypt it, they RAR it, they encrypt it. So most of the time, I actually kind of laugh sometimes when I hear people saying they stole this, they touched that, this is blah, blah, blah. Because they don't know. If most organizations can't detect lateral movement, they're definitely not going to be able to tell what they stole. Because if I can't tell what endpoint they touched, how am I going to know what they did, right? And so, can you detect RAR files going out of your network? Huh? Yeah, most. I think that's a word. So you should be able to do that, right? But a lot of people can't do that. What's funny about that is that there was a DoD contractor a couple of years ago. The Chinese got on their network, and they were stealing so much data that they were having bandwidth congestion problems. That's pretty wild, right? Stealing so much data that your bandwidth, they was arguing with their telco provider, like, hey man, our bandwidth, we're paying for this much. And then they finally did, somebody came in and looked at the bandwidth, RAR files, boom. It's like gigs and gigs and gigs of data, right? It's going out the network. So what the attackers are doing, I agree that the attackers are taking everything. We'll talk about the value of the data. So they're just pretty much finding everything they can, compressing it, encrypting it, and sending it out to your network. Also, they're doing stuff like DNS tunneling. They're sending stuff through DNS tunnel, doing A records. Have anybody ever seen a DNS tunnel attack on the network? Could you detect the DNS? How many people can absolutely detect it on the network?
You're forcing DNS servers to be able to.
Say again?
You're forcing the internal DNS servers on the user authorized servers, and they're trying to call someone out to go track it.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if they're telling them your DNS server, then the attack's already got issues.
Yeah. So a lot of times people using external DNS, but a lot of businesses are using external services, and they're not monitoring it for you. I recommend, like, you should be able to kind of find that act going on. And also, I like these, like, there's a lot of these signs right across the street. Like, hey, you can't park down here in Asheville. So the deal is, like, unauthorized vehicles. Like, can you detect, like, totally unauthorized traffic on your network, right? Can you detect that? If I have a server right here that say if it's an HR server, if somebody from, like, engineering or something is connected to that server, could I tell? And could I actually somehow find that host down to the switch port, down to the VLAN, to the whatever? We see a lot of people not able to do that as well. So you have to be able to detect unauthorized traffic, unauthorized hosts even on your network somehow. A lot of people don't do asset inventory. A lot of people are doing bring your own device. You can a place like this, we can take any laptop and connect to the Wi-Fi here. And I'm sure that there's not one laptop in here that's infected with anything.
But I use a MacBook. It doesn't get viruses.
Secure by default.
Right. So there's a lot of attackers that are actually posting stuff out externally to the network as well. Like tons of post requests, send little bitty chunks of data, send little bitty chunks of data. Because if you do have your network locked up, they have to go to different techniques. So can you somehow monitor post requests? Like if somebody's posting stuff to Twitter or something ridiculous like that, we hear people posting to blog or getting data and posting all these different sites. Like, can you tell if there was like a crazy amount of post requests from a particular host that's stealing your data, right? A lot of people can't detect that, right? And it's like this is like really essential. And also, the way you do it though is you have to be able to, you got to be able to log all the things. You got to have the right equipment to log as well, because you just can't go out there, me and you guys and all the people in the room, we just can't go out here and log without the right tool set, right? So get some tools, get the right tools, and log all the things. Because if something really happens, like on your network, somebody in your network should be like, Houston, we have a problem, right? You have to be able to like, hey, look, there's something going on here. You have to have that like mission control, because like from what they say, some people are saying that OPM was attacked like up to a year ago. Some people say OPM has been on for 10 years. Like, dang, that's pretty epic, right?
Now I know why you don't believe in privacy. Your SF-86 got leaked about 6 years ago.
Yeah, I think every one of us has been thoroughly compromised, and we just don't know it. I've seen the worst. I'll talk about that later. Yeah, so like Houston, we have a problem. So you should be able to have these sensors and monitors on your network, right? I know we get pissed like, man, we're like in a police state, cameras all over the place. But hey, on your network, you should be like Sophie that dude, right? You should be monitoring everything, logging everything, and all that stuff. Another thing you should be doing in order to log other stuff, so I believe in like DNS monitor, get a really good DNS monitoring solution.
Just visually.
Use something like OpenDNS to actually be able to monitor DNS. They actually give you a lot of tools. OpenDNS does a lot of tools to help you do this kind of stuff, monitoring that stuff. Also, I'm a firm believer, have been for a long time, in full packet capturing. If you don't have a full packet capturing device, find one, do TCP dump, do whatever you have to do. Also be able to do something like Wireshark or something to actually inspect the traffic. Because the Wireshark, if it's unencrypted, you'll be able to detect all kind of interesting stuff. Also, this is the purple. I'm like a crypto dude because that's kind of like what I did in the military. Something like a total crypto fanboy. Purple here. You have to be able to break crypto in your own organization. You have to have some kind of way to do it. I know Blue Coat caught a lot of heat recently about, and I don't think people understand, like, if you're allowing people to totally send data out with SSL of your network, you're asking for problems because you can't monitor a lot of stuff. So I firmly believe in a little bitty air gap with your network security monitoring tools in between to unencrypt traffic. Because, attackers use what's ever available, and they're going to be using SSL. You're not trying to be a privacy, you're not trying to break their privacy, you're just trying to protect your network, right? Another thing is understanding what are the crown jewels of your network. A lot of times people don't know, but I'm gonna try to tell you like a little bit of what I've learned, and I'm coming full circle from what I've learned. We're trying to do a business and running a startup. So the problem again is this whole thing of the data classifications, right? So NSA, anybody ever heard of information assessment methodology? Who's heard of that? I want to see a hand raised on this. Tell me if you heard of it. Right? So have you used it before in your organization? All right. So this is really good stuff. This actually was a program
NSA ran, and actually they had free training back in the day. So NSA's one of their core mission is to prevent people from doing espionage and intercepting U.S. companies while absolutely pwning everybody else too. It's an awesome mission, right? So, so the information assessment methodology tells a business to actually use, and they actually use the CIA methodology, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability to actually assess your organization and enforce the proper controls. I think a big problem with this whole espionage and people getting totally owned is because they don't know what to protect. So, and a good example of this is if you're a medical company, if you're a hospital, for instance, what's the most important thing in that hospital? So is it the confidentiality of hospital records? Is it the availability of them? Or is it the integrity of them? I would personally say, in order to save lives, confidentiality probably is not the top priority for a hospital, because they need to have availability, they need to have the right data, prescriptions or whatever, and they need to make sure that those prescriptions don't get changed.
So the actual confidentiality to a hospital is probably low on the totem pole. So if you work at a hospital, I don't know if you do, and you could take that same example to any
kind of thing, but the information assessment methodology tells you okay, cool. Your primary security mission should be the integrity of the data and availability of the data. And you can apply that, and it's still out there, all the documentation and stuff, but I think they discontinued that training for whatever reasons. But it's definitely money, because that's actually how you kind of like fight this whole, you got to fight the battle, and you have to have a plan. You can't protect everything. That's why we're losing. And so this is what it comes down, right? So an idea, this is a twofold. Like, people talk about intellectual property all the time. I'm going to ask a question. What is intellectual property to someone in here? Can you give me an example of it?
Secret sauce.
Secret sauce? Secret sauce, like what?
You want a specific example, or do you want
A specific example.
Formula to Coke.
Huh? Formula to Coke?
your code?
My code,
Your proprietary source code.
source code.
Proprietary encryption.
Acquisition, mergers and acquisition.
Oh, I like that. Mergers and acquisition. That's a really big one right there, right?
And it could be as small as payroll data. It's not really intellectual property per se, but we don't want to reveal to the internet.
Yeah.
It could be something that you've developed that is either trademarked or patentable or patented, that is some new idea that you want to make sure that nobody else can replicate, thereby stealing your profits from your wallet.
The
All right, cool.
implementation of your methodology that makes your business.
Implementation, I love this. This is good stuff. Because a lot of times we don't think about it. That business stuff is more important than your actual product, idea, or whatever. And I'm gonna break it down to you in the next couple of slides. Because actually, like all the stuff that you do on your network and protecting your network and all that stuff, it's just a speed bump because eventually they're gonna actually get in and they're gonna do something, right? It's just a speed bump. Also, if somebody, anytime we release a product over here that's worth anything, if the Chinese manufacturers or whoever else is coming in, right, if they don't get the data, they're just going to reverse engineer it anyway. It's a speed bump. So maybe they get it, 6 months before you release it, but after you release it, they ship one to China and they reverse engineer the whole thing. So it's going to happen anyway. This kind of data, like Salesforce data, this is the kind of information that I would be after if I was an attacker. This is the kind of information, if I'm an overseas competitor, this is what I want. I want your Salesforce data. It's going to have a lot of stuff in there. It's going to have your customers in there, right? So if I build a similar product to you, I'm going to be actually looking at, okay, cool, who's their customers, right? And who's their leads, right? How are they getting people to the registers and pay for stuff, right? That's actually more important than the actual product itself, because if you don't sell the product, who cares? So, really awesome story. I was in Norway doing a security training thing. So this guy comes up to me and he asked me for advice, because everybody thinks I'm like cool or something, I guess. He asked me for advice. I guess he thought I knew what I was talking about. So he's like, hey, this competitor keeps on undercutting us on bids. It's like, what do you mean? It's like, all right, we send them a proposal, and some of these proposals we're like sole source. They didn't ask for any other solicitation, and somehow they found out about the bid, and somebody else comes in and undercut them. And so every time they did a bid, they actually did fake bids on stuff, and they were trying to undercut the fake bids. And they was like, oh snap, like what's happening here? And so I thought that was probably an insider or something like that. It could have been somebody, but the moment there is like, dang, maybe you should have like, and how they tried to catch them is they tried to issue they tried to issue their salespeople like, all right, boom, here's this bid, here's this bid, fictitious bids, and try to see which one would come back. Never heard from him, but that's absolutely insane. So that's kind of like what this whole espionage thing is really about. It's about actually making money. It's not so much about the ideas, because truth be told, there is somebody executing the same idea all over the place. There's a million hospitals, there's a million startups, all these people doing the same stuff.
So does that mean that like there's a million people doing your idea?
There's several people trying to do what I'm doing. Yes.
You're doing it better.
Yeah. That's it. You got to do it better than everybody else.
That's right.
That's the mitigation. Technical difficulties. Am I good?
Yeah, we've been good for a while.
All right, because it just wigged out and dropped me.
We had a little audio glitch, so but you both sounded good for a while.
All right, cool. I lost control of what I'm doing over here, though. Oh my God.
Oh, that's yours.
Yeah, it totally jacked up PowerPoint.
You need open office.
But it's a Mac.
Yeah, but it's a Microsoft product.
You know what I'm saying? That's like oil and water, right? Microsoft and Mac.
Seems like Microsoft has eaten a little bit of humble pie in the last few years. They're better.
All right, so that's it. Like with Salesforce, if I get into your Salesforce, and people talk about the cloud stuff all the time, but most of the time they talk about cloud is they talk about running your software in the cloud and all that stuff. I think it's way more important to like wow, somebody get in my Salesforce, they have all my customers, they're gonna have all my potential leads, they're gonna know what bids are, they're gonna know if the leads hot or cold, they're gonna know all that stuff. And so this is stuff I learned trying to sell software, right? I'm like, wow, that's a different way to look at it. And as Josh said, they're gonna know your financials, they're gonna know all that stuff. So if you're a publicly traded company, the cool thing about that is that there's actually a market that will develop if it's not, and I'm pretty sure that this is going on already, they're gonna be able to trade futures, stock, and all that stuff. And even Weave said at one point that he wants to create a company called Troll LLC or something. Weave was talking about doing that as like of a hedge fund kind of situation for when somebody's breached or whatever. But the truth is, like the people that are actually doing this really like corporate espionage type stuff, they can actually resell this data, and you will never know where the data came from, right? They just say, oh, I have a good hunch. And if somebody proves that they have good hunches, quote unquote, they're gonna make a killing. So that legit data, I mean that stolen data is gonna be in turn used to make money. Like that's where it's going, and I'm pretty sure that it's already going on. If you look at some of if anybody that bids on a contract related to China, they get owned, right? And there's been I've seen an article saying that China is using that information to actually to get people bidding wars and drive price down. But the truth is, like, if companies pay for leads all the time, like lead gen, and so how do you know where that data is coming from? You feel me? How do you know? I think there's definitely a market for laundered data. Bidding information, things like this. Who uses Box or Dropbox? Anybody use these? Right? So the problem again is not necessarily your software, none of that stuff. But once they get on here, how do you know when they're logging in? You lose some kind of control. I'm not saying don't put stuff on Box or Dropbox, but if one of those companies get owned, all your data is definitely going to be out there, right? And so it's just coming to reality, like, okay, cool. Then what? Like, what's the worst that's going to happen then? GitHub. A lot of people write software. There's private GitHubs. People use these things all the time. And most of the time when people talk about IP, they are talking about, code or whatever, right? The thing is, these people, everybody's going to get owned. And when they do get owned, you're going to find out. So you can actually do a Google search for who's using Dropbox, because they like to brag on who's using them. You can say who's using GitHub, and you'll find a page. There's a lot of government agencies using GitHub, right? And I don't know what they're using it for. What if somebody compromised, some government organization's GitHub, right? Change some stuff, whatever, and then submit it back to the repo. And then the next time they do a push, boom, they push the bad stuff up there. Stuff like that can definitely happen. Because that's the kind of stuff that's like, wow, this is like really getting crazy with all this outsourcing stuff. It's not going to change. There's nothing you can do about it. Just realize that that's a possibility of stuff that's probably going to happen in the future. Anybody use Slack? So people use Slack. Slack again is one of those things. Slack got compromised a little bit ago, and so they're gonna have not only they compromise you, they're gonna have access sometimes to your corporate communications and such. And the big thing that's coming up, I swear, is this is it. This is a laundromat. So many people have been compromised by so many different events now. I'm not sure if it matters even if people get compromised again. Like OPM got compromised, banks got compromised, healthcare organizations got compromised, and then every time like, oh my God, they're gonna have all this data. They already have the data. Like the only thing that OPM probably revealed was stuff like affairs, sexual preference, stuff like stuff that can embarrass you. But most of that other stuff is already out there on the internet. Somebody already has it. It's been too many dang breaches, right? And what do we do about it, right? I think, and this is like an international criminal court logo, but it's like international law has to kick in at some point. And I think that the U.S. would be best, instead of talking about cyber war and all that stuff, I think we need to pursue these things in international courts. Because that's the only way you're gonna be fighting for, like, if you have a patent on something or somebody totally rip you off, you're gonna have, that's like actually a legal fight. So we're gonna have to have countries like China really cooperate with us on things like that. And I don't think it has nothing to do with cyber at all. I think you have to protect as long as you can. And then you have to classify data, protect it as long as you can, but the data is definitely going to be compromised at some point. I'm not saying defeatist. I'm not saying we're an InfoSec defeatist or anything. The data is going to get compromised, and we have to be able to find out, okay, what's next business. Everybody's talking about OPM right now. There's like, man, there's so much onus going on, bro. Like in general, it's ridiculous. But as a business, what we have to do is we have to like think like, what's the worst case scenario? Let's classify stuff, and when is stuff perishable? Because we have to set perishable stuff. Like for instance, like if I have a big marketing campaign kicking off from I'm a software company, I want to keep that under wraps. But as soon as I launch it, I don't care about it no more. But what's happening is they launch it and they still protecting it just like anything. Like you gotta say, okay, cool. This is totally unclassified right now. We don't care. It's not business confidential anymore. So this book is absolutely awesome. Anybody ever seen this book? Man, this book will change your life. It changed my personal life, and it changed the way I look at InfoSec. Because the whole thesis of this book is assume the absolute worst that's going to happen, and then work back from there, right? I think we have the opposite of it. You like the book?
If you prepare for the worst case scenario, there ceases to be a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Expect that you prepare for it.
Yeah. So that's how I think the security personnel and security groups need to, like, look, we want to protect as much as we can, but assume the worst. If we have a total massive breach, this is how we're going to respond, right? And I'm talking about from a business level down to the PR, down to the media, down to whatever, corporate comms. I think you should have a canned letter ready to go for when you get owned. And by having a good technical controls and good technical systems and IDSs, IPS, and all that stuff, you can do a great incident response to get them out of your network. And then you have to start over again. Like, in military, like we practice on a ship, I was on a destroyer, we had emergency destruction procedures. Like if our ship ever, sunk or something like that, and there was actually some shipmates of mine when I was at Fort Meade. You remember when the P3 went down in China? So in the military, we assume that once a device is in the hands of somebody else, it's completely compromised, game over. And so the same thing with something on your network, and this is what makes me laugh about us, what we call stunt hacking. It's like, if I have a medical device and I completely control the medical device, of course I should be able to hack it. Because that's just the way it is. In the military, that's how we think. It's all over. What do we do now? We got to issue new crypto. We might, heck, if they get the crypto gear, we have to obsolete their crypto equipment. That's how it goes in the Navy. Like hardcore drastic like that. So this book, I highly recommend you read it. It actually, to be real, you can actually listen to it on YouTube. You can actually do an audio book on YouTube. Just pull it up, type that in, and you can listen to the audiobook. It's probably highly illegal or something, but you need that in your life. So,
Advocating felony.
it's probably not a felony. Maybe a misdemeanor. But whoever uploaded it, that's their problem. All right. So here's a little bit about us, V-Threat. Gage is back in the pink shirt. Very manly in the pink. I can't tell. Salmon, right? All right. So.
There's only 16 colors.
Yeah. All right. So V-Threat, you can follow us at V-Threat. Marcus at V-Threat is my email address. That's me on Twitter. People say I'm hilarious. Some people hate me on Twitter, but I have fun. And also we have a little bitty table back there. Come back. We'll show you what we're doing with our product. That's it. Hey, thanks for listening. And we're gonna. Any questions?
Yeah, I got a quick question. I wonder sometimes after so many breaches, public is gonna, catch on to some of the things that the military has been doing for a long time. Misinformation, disinformation. I just wonder if we're going to shortly, not too long from now, start seeing a world where people start developing their own OPSEC and start putting out, there might be even marketplaces for this, try to put out information that is incorrect as far as their PII, just to see that, you see what I'm saying? I can actually see that maybe being an end game here, that there actually starts being maybe even businesses that will put out incorrect information, PII about you, to confuse these people, kind of confound them. It is happening?
All major banks, financial institutions purposely salt out bad information, and they purposely inject in phishing pages, and things like that, just so they can try and track down the sources. So it absolutely already is happening.
Yeah. So another thing is and I always thought stuff like that. If I were in the intel game still, if I was affiliated with any kind of intelligence agency, I would totally paste bin, all those different things. I would totally own all those. If I was military, I would put it's so many things I would do if I was still in the intel game, and stuff like that. I love that stuff. A couple of years ago, I released a tool called HoneyDocs to have
I'm so maybe never heard that.
Yeah. So HoneyDocs was something I built to do callbacks. People can download a document. If somebody breached it, you just put it on the server, and it would dial back. It would call back home and do geo coordinates for anybody to open up the document. That's something I did a while ago.
And actually, there was a company that claimed to have invented it.
Yeah.
And when I called them on it, they're like, "Oh, well,
Yeah.
So
in this game, in the security game, and the biggest threat to any business is somebody, like I said, it's the business process. Anybody will tell you. Anybody watch the show called The Prophet? Anybody watch that show? Man, yeah, I love that show. It's on MSNBC, and if you look at that, he said that any business is based on three things. He talks about people, process, and the product. The product, anybody can clone your product. It doesn't matter too much about patents and all that stuff. Anybody can deliver the product you have. So what you have to do is you have to have the best people, and you have to have the best process. That's how you win the cybersecurity game. It's not about, that's it. And remember that we help the business execute by protecting their data as long as we can. And that's what I did in the military. I protected the data as long as I could so troops could get out there and fight the war. So the same thing with the information security people, protect it as long as you can so your company can execute its plans. And that's how you fight cyber espionage. That's how you fight the InfoSec battle. Any other questions, comments?
How's that company doing?
Huh?
How's that company doing that took your name?
I don't know.
So we talk about protecting software and platform and hardware, but don't you think we should be protecting the behavioral patterns of the users themselves more importantly, considering that 90% of your breaches originate from people? Shouldn't we be worried about who's using the key rather than what key was used? An example, Snowden, once again, compromised a bunch of systems. He had legitimate usernames and passwords for these users. none of the systems would have caught him because he would have fit the profile and said, yes, he had authentication rights, rather than looking at a behavioral pattern that here's somebody using this authentication and originating from a network segment that it shouldn't have been there.
Yeah,
So I guess my question is,
absolutely.
why don't we focus more on the behavioral processing of the users rather than just the data?
It's hard.
Well, let me first let me answer it, and then Josh.
It's kind of a trick question because that's what we build.
Yeah. So on that, I see a lot of people that are that's definitely did you go to RSA?
I didn't go this year.
Yeah. So that's actually a major movement. Huh? Yeah. So that's a major movement. People are doing like behavioral analysis, and that's right. So if somebody has legit credentials, they're coming from Hawaii in Snowden's case, they're accessing something that's in Fort Meade, or something in San Antonio, or something in Georgia. Yeah, that should be a red flag, right? So, yeah, so behavioral, but again, log all the things, right? You have to have the logs, and you have to be able to execute. You have to have a good process in place, right? And it's all about process, and tools, software can definitely make that easier, right? So yeah, just have a good process to do that.
Yeah, that's basically the same idea. The problem is people suck at being consistent. You can baseline the living hell out of them, and people suck at being consistent. You can baseline them to hell and back, but will they be consistent about their behavior, or will you be chasing false positives all day long? So the question is process and behavior. It's not just a behavior, it's not just a process.
It's a couple of, so even like in the Snowden case, Snowden actually, if I think about the behavior to myself, if I think about it, he's in Hawaii. That's like at least probably 8-hour time shift from the East Coast or something ridiculous like that. I lived in Hawaii. I was stationed at Fort Meade. So, I was stationed at Pearl Harbor on a ship. So that's an 8-hour time shift, right? So if he's using credentials in Fort Meade, like it has to be some kind of analysis saying, look, this person's logging in. This person's usually a day worker or whatever at the fort, right? Their hours are right here. We have somebody that obviously Snowden would have been. I don't believe he was that smart to go in on off hours or nothing. I don't think he would have been doing that. But there should have been something.
You can't really say.
I'm telling you right now. I know from experience that there's different shifts, right? So, and some of the stuff he would have been accessing, that stuff. That wasn't like 24-hour shift type people. Like there's only a couple of people at the fort that work all the time. Those are SOC type people and all that stuff. Rest of everybody works during the day. All right, cool. All right, we should have a good conversation later. So the hard part of this talk was I don't know where I learned certain information from. So if I would have learned it from my old life, I was like, I better not include any of that stuff in this talk. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff going on at the fort. I believe at the end of the day, I think that they're trying to do the right thing. But sometimes money gets in the way, like contractors and stuff. So that's kind of pretty much what I think about Fort Meade. We good? All right, appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming out.